Russia is in Syria right now because the head of the Quds force traveled to Russia and talked Vladimir Putin into aligning themselves with Iran and Syria to prop up Bashar al-Assad. Russia is a bad actor, but Vladimir Putin is someone we should not talk to.
Carly Fiorina, the Republican presidential candidate during the GOP's second debate, taking a very strong stance against Russia and that nation's involvement in Syria. In the meantime, the current Secretary of State, John Kerry, prepares for direct talks with Russia over its growing involvement in Syria. Most military talks with Russia suspended after that nation annexed the Crimea region of the Ukraine. So, will anything good come out of these talks? For more, let's welcome in General Michael Hayden, retired Air Force general, former director of both the NSA and Central Intelligence. He joins us from Newsmax Washington, and as always, Mike, thanks for your time here on Newsmax Prime. Given John Kerry's indulgence of the Iranians, is there fear that these talks with Russia could end up actually accommodating the Russians?
Well, I actually think that's a legitimate fear, JD, and I realize the circumstances in which we find ourselves now. I mean, Secretary Carter talked to his Russian counterpart today also as well. And I can see how the NSC meeting might have evolved, that we have got to talk to these folks now because of the Russian military presence there. But JD, I mean, you have to step back and think, what could we have done differently over the past several years to prevent the Russians from returning in force to the Middle East for the first time since 1973? What we're doing today, and you can judge it good or bad if you like, what we're doing today is a reflection of what we have not done with regard to the Syrian crisis over the last 3 to 4 years.
Well, we know in the here and now that the Syrian president, Bashar al-Assad, says he has strong confidence that Russia will continue to support his regime. So, with that in mind, is it wise to heed a warning like Carly Fiorina offered the other night, or is it more Churchillian? What was the saying? It's always better to jaw as opposed to war.
Well, I actually think the talks between Secretary Carter and his Russian counterpart were necessary, if nothing else, JD, to make sure we understood one another with regard to our military forces in the region. I think that was regrettable that we had to do it, but I understand it. Now, talking at the political level with the Russians is something else. And I think I'd pause and make sure I knew exactly what I wanted and exactly what I believed I could get from the Russians before I began that process. JD, we have made it our policy all along that there is no political solution with Bashar al-Assad still as president. If the Russians have the contrary view, I don't see the point in any discussions with them at the political level.
Well, you and I need to discuss yet another troubling story. It seems the Obama administration is one step closer to closing the prison at Gimto. They've transferred another detainee, a Moroccan man believed to have been associated with Osama bin Laden. As according to the count right now, 121 prisoners have been freed, but 10% of those have returned to terror. Will that percentage increase if Gimto is shut down?
Well, it's 10% of the last 121, JD. If you talk about the whole population that have been released from Guantanamo, including those under the Bush administration, the recidivism rate ranges between 20 and 30%, depending on how you count them. So this is going to be a lingering problem. But in this case, JD, Secretary Carter has been very reluctant to release folks. And so if Ash Carter signs on to the release of an individual, particularly to a country like Morocco, which remains stable and friendly to the United States, I'm willing to give the administration the benefit of the doubt on this one. But JD, We should not be operating under an artificial timeline of American presidential elections. We should be releasing people from Guantanamo as indicated by the specific facts in each case.
And Mike, in the time that remains, Sergeant Bo Bergdahl in military court today to determine if he'll face a court-martial for leaving his post in Afghanistan. According to the prosecutor, Bergdahl planned for weeks to abandon his post. Do you have a comment on this case? 20 seconds, sir.
I do. He's accused of misbehavior in the face of the enemy. That's almost the most serious charge you can get with a uniformed member of our armed forces. And JD, one wonders what staff member in the current White House thought it was a good idea for the president to personally relate to Sergeant Bergdahl's parents at the weekend of his release.
Yeah, you look back at the videotape of that meeting in the Rose Garden, it was bizarre. Mike Hayden, we thank you for your time. There's more ahead.